board chair of the Fund for Women and Girls, and I'm delighted to see so many people willing to get dressed up for women and girls at 9 a.m. That alone tells me that we're in the right spot. Welcome to the Women's Rights Breakfast, and thank you for being here as we celebrate 30 years of the Fund. 30 years of showing up through every political season, every economic headwind, because women and girls of this region deserve nothing less. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we gather on the ancestral lands of the Lenape people, displaced through colonization, broken treaties, and forced migration. We honor the Lenape Nation of Pennsylvania and their ongoing work to preserve their culture, language, and pursuit of justice. Their work reminds us history is not over. It lives in what we choose to do next. Which brings us to today's theme, Freedom and Justice Deferred. As part of America 250 and inspired by the Chester County Community Foundation's Dare to Declare initiative, we will examine the promises of Declaration of Independence through the lens of gender and race. It said all people, not some. Not someday, but all. We're still working on that to close that gap. That is not cynicism, that is a call to action. This morning you'll hear voices from across history who refuse to wait for freedom to be convened. You'll also hear from a mother-daughter team, Vernita and LaVante Dorsey, who will share what the gap between promise and reality looks like today. I want to be direct. Events like this are meaningful, but meaning without action is just a nice morning out. So as you listen, ask yourself, what is my role? What conversations have I been avoiding? What organization will I fund? What young woman in my life needs to hear this week exactly what she's capable of? Freedom and justice deferred is only permanent if we let it be. Every person in this room has influence. The question is whether we use it. We hope today leaves you informed, inspired, and a little restless. That restlessness, that's the beginning of change. And now I'm honored to invite Ashley Scott from Senator Carolyn Committa's office and Chester County Commissioner Josh Maxwell to present citations in honor of the Fund's 30th anniversary.
Hi everyone, my name is Ashley Scott. I'm here today on behalf of Senator Committa, and we are so honored to be here with all of you. Today we are recognizing the 30th anniversary of the Fund for Women and Girls in Chester County, so yay, congratulations. And to commemorate that occasion, we have a beautiful citation. Sure.
We were walking up and she said, am I going first? I think that's the point. My name is Josh Maxwell. I'm chair of the Board of Commissioners here in Chester County, and it is so cool to see all of you here in this space. It is the 250th anniversary of this country, as you've heard, and you're going to hear every day for the rest of the year. I want to mention two things because I think it's important to this group specifically, and I think the rest of the county needs to hear. In this building in 1852 was the first Pennsylvania Women's Suffrage Convention, right in the basement of the building. Presumably that's why you picked this place. But Ann Preston, who's out there, gave a speech that day, information about her and her medical accomplishments out of West Grove, Pennsylvania. But I think we peaked in 1852 to 1854. because 2 years later, we started the first degree-granting HBCU in the country in Lincoln University in the southern part of the county. And at Lincoln, where I'm going to right after this, you're talking 10 years before the end of slavery. 10 years between the 13th Amendment, that school was started to give black men a peaceful place to learn and grow. In 1926, 2 students were there, a gentleman by the name of Langston Hughes, who became a poet of some note. Anyone heard of Langston Hughes? And his classmate was Thurgood Marshall, the first black Supreme Court justice of all time. Can you imagine being the English teacher for Langston Hughes and Thurgood Marshall? Like, that's just a little late. You know, I don't know about all these comments. What's this dig and be done thing? What does that even mean? But I'm going to read you a quote that Langston Hughes wrote while he was a student at Lincoln University in 1926. I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. But I laugh, and I eat well, and I go strong. One of our greatest poets of all time, and one of our greatest universities of all time, and the greatest moments of all time in 1926. So my understanding is this fund got started to empower women 30 years ago because it saw a need. I don't think it's lost on anyone that that need's going to exist for at least another 30 years. So on behalf of all the women and girls in this county, thank you for what you're doing. I'm sorry you still need to give and volunteer, do all the things you need to do, but know that you're having a meaningful impact. I have 15 interns in my office this summer, 12 are young women, and all are ready to take my job. So. Wow, good thing I didn't get a standing ovation. All right. I just want to mention the fund has awarded $4.7 million in grants to 102 nonprofits during these 30 years. And Next Gen Advisory Council, Civic G+, and Vote 160PA, the blueprint that helped employers know that women need to get as much as men throughout the county. You guys are doing a wonderful job. You don't need to hear me say it, but you should. Congratulations to the fund for 30 years of great service.
Good morning. Good morning. So hello, my name is Whitney Hallman. I am the Communications Associate for the Funded Women Girls. Yay. As our spoken word performance make their way to the stage, thank you all, we want to take an important moment to acknowledge our generous sponsors. A big thank you to our series sponsors, Wisfis Cares Foundation, Barbara Jordan, and Priscilla Connolly. Also to our event sponsors, Tolsdorf Oil Lube Express, the Chester County Community Foundation, Aqua, an essential utilities company, and Mill Creek Capital Advisors. You can also find a full list of the sponsors in your program at each of your seats. So the Declaration of Independence states that all people are created equal, with the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those words have inspired movements for freedom and justice around the entire world. Yet from the very beginning, there was profound contradiction. A nation proclaiming equality while enslaving people, excluding women, and denying rights and humanity to many. The struggle to reconcile those contradictions with the ideals of freedom and justice did not end, unfortunately, until 1776, and is very evident still today, unfortunately. This conversation may not be comfortable, but we believe it's very important. I welcome you all to journey back through history with me, and if you'd like to follow along, feel free to turn to page 3 to 4 of your program to follow along with us. Thank you, everybody.
Hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That, whenever form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government.
It is the right of those who suffer from it to refuse allegiance to it and to insist upon the institution of a new government.
laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies.
Such has been the patient sufferance of the women under this government, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to demand the equal station to which they are entitled. The history of mankind is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations on the part of man toward woman, having indirect object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over her.
I heard that paper yesterday that says that all men are born equal and that every man has the right to freedom. I am not a dumb critter. Won't the law give me any freedom?
Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
What have I to do with your national independence? This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. Frederick Douglass, 1852.
You white women speak here of rights. I speak of wrongs. Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, 1866.
All men are created equal.
Only the black woman can say when and where I enter. There the whole Negro race enters with me. Anna Julia Cooper, 1892.
Not only are colored women with ambition and aspiration handicapped on account of their sex, but they are almost everywhere baffled and mocked because of their race. Not only because they are women, but because they are colored women. Our discouragement and disappointment meeting them at every turn. Mary Church Terrell, 1904.
It is their right, it is their duty.
The majority of the Spanish-speaking peoples of the United States are the victims of a setup for discrimination. Be they descendants of the first white settlers in America of non-citizens. They have contributed their endurance, sacrifices, youth, and labor to the Southwest. Indirectly, they have paid more taxes than all the stockholders of California's industrialized agriculture. Louisa Moreno, 1940.
Perhaps our most important concerns are with the rights to vote and to representative government, and with equal rights to education and employment. Hopefully, our economy will outgrow concepts of class competition, such as Negro versus white, youth versus age, or male versus female, and, at least in matters of employment, standards of merit and individual quality will control rather than prejudice. Ollie Murray and Mary O. Eastwood, 1945.
All men are created equal.
The Negro woman, as worker, as Negro and as woman, is the most oppressed section of the whole population. She receives less pay for equal work with men, but in that she is more exploited than any other group in the population. Negro women are found in the lowest paid jobs, are the last hired and the first fired, are the most oppressed, most exploited section of the working class. Claudia Jones, 1949.
There is no such thing as a single-issue struggle because we do not live single-issue lives. Audre Lorde, 1982.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
We are committed to struggling against racial, sexual, heterosexual, and class oppression.
The major systems of oppression are interlocking. The synthesis of these oppressions creates the conditions of our lives.
With certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty.
Black women are inherently valuable, that our liberation is a necessity.
Because of our need as human persons for autonomy.
and the pursuit of happiness.
We do not have even the minimal access to resources and power that groups who possess any of these types of privilege have.
That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
Black women's relationship to the American political system, a system of white male rule,
has always been determined by our membership in two oppressed racial and sexual castes.
It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government.
Many Black women have a good understanding of both sexism and racism.
But because of the everyday constrictions of their lives, cannot risk struggling against them both.
All men are created equal.
If Black women were free, it would mean that everybody else would have to be free.
Thank you again to our readers for the spoken word, and to Andrea Blue and our team who did a tremendous amount of research to pull these readings together. We are now going to transition to the second part of our program and be able to have a conversation with Vernita and LaVante. So the two of you are welcome to come on up, and Andrea will be talking with them. We are very privileged to have both of these women with us. Vernita has paved, I don't know if that's quite the, we're mixing metaphors here, but paved uncharted waters at WSPIS. That's probably minimizing it a little bit. And as of Tuesday of this week, LaVante is now a TEDx speaker, so we have a link. Oh, yesterday. So when that comes out, we really look forward to hearing that as well. And Andrea, please take it away.
I do this in church all the time. The clip.
Okay, thank you for being here. Don't do this all the time. So before we dig into your stories, wondering if you have any brief response to what we just saw.
Okay, I'll go first. What really stood out was equal, overthrow the government. I said, oh, I have that much power even today. But it was powerful just to hear where we have come from, but then to also wonder, have we really come that far?
And I guess as I was listening, I was looking out across the room. It's a hard conversation to hear some of those words, but when we hear it, it should go into us. It should help us to realize change has happened in some cases, but there's much more change to come.
So I hope everybody in the room is as excited as I am, because it's kind of interesting and exciting to put a mother and daughter side by side, right? And have them share their experiences. So when we had this opportunity, we were like, this is going to be really cool. So before we go in that direction, I want to ask Vernita to tell us a little bit about your mom and how she shaped your life and who you are today.
Gladly. So my mom, who just turned 92 on May 9th, she grew up, her mother was a single parent after her father left soon after she and her brothers were conceived. And they were in Florida. She lived in Florida, but then moved to Alabama, where the family, they were doing migrant work. So they would go across the state picking cotton. And, you know, she's told us stories of, you know, the the injustices that occurred during that time and how hard, the work was, and just the fact that her mother was a single parent trying to raise 2 boys and a girl. But it was a difficult time for them. And, in hearing those stories, I think I've had a lot of advantages in my life. And I don't know that I would have been or survived the way she did during that time.
How do you attribute your strength to your mother?
The fact, she married and they, settled in Pennsylvania. I grew up with a mother and a father, so I had a strong, parental force in my life. I saw her, though, work hard throughout her life. My father, early on, wound up having a heart attack, and she really had to support the family after that. And, just to see the resilience that she had during that time, and, as the tables turned, she came to live with me a few years ago, and so now I'm the caregiver, and, I'm so grateful that the influence that she had in my life is what it was. And, she always told me, as I, things happened in my life and I was put into positions and different things, she always said, it's wonderful that you are, achieving the way you are, but don't let your head get too big. Because just as quickly as you climb, you can just as quickly go down. And I've kept that thought, in my mind all these years.
Hard balance to be strong and confident and to remember not for your head to get too big.
Well, I think it's, just in terms of humbleness. You need to be humble because, lots of people don't have some of the advantages that I have had, and lots of people deserve, to have those. I think it's in knowing who you are, putting it all in perspective.
So if you find Vernita's bio in your program, you will see that she has the distinction of being the first senior vice president of color at Wisvis Bank. What do you attribute that to? How did that happen?
So I've been in banking. This year makes, I think, my 46th year in banking. I'm so young, how could that be? But, through the years, I've had a lot of experiences in different roles. I've been the only one in a lot of rooms throughout my career, and have experienced, what I would consider to be some injustices. But along the way, I met a lot of good people, good mentors, people who kept me grounded in what I was doing. And so I think when this came about, it was because of my work ethic and the work that I had done over the years, from bank to bank, because in Delaware, I'm from Delaware, there are lots of banks and lots of acquisitions and mergers, and I've had a lot of those in my career. But people along the way, saw the work that I do and valued that work for what it was, not just because I was a Black woman. And so I was afforded that opportunity. I don't know if this is the time or if there's another question, but I'll just tell the quick story. So when I was, told that I was going to be a senior vice president, I didn't know that I was the first one. And so our president then, Mark Turner, took me to lunch at what's interesting, I think, is the Wilmington Club, which used to be a men's exclusive club. Women were not allowed, and Black women were certainly not allowed. And so he took me to lunch, and as we're having lunch, he said to me, Vernita, you're the first senior vice president of color and a woman at this company. And at that time, the company was 185 years old. And so, you know, I'm at lunch, and that falls on me. And I thought, I said to him, I said, Mark, I said, you know, I feel honored, number one, and humbled to have that role. I said, but at the same time, I feel like now the weight of the world is on my shoulders, because that's got to change. And he agreed. He said, you're absolutely right. He said, you know, and we will do better. And he went on, you know, along with encouragement and other folks to make change.
So that was 2017, when you were promoted to Senior Vice President. Can you give us any insight on what changed in 2020?
Ooh, I look around the room. A lot changed in 2020. You know, not just all that was going on. George Floyd, I will say, had a big influence in a lot of people's lives during that time, that tragedy. And so at that time, the bank did not have what a lot of our organizations have in terms of a DEI officer or resource groups that have different groups, you know, that are involved in either racial things or could be people with disabilities, those kinds of things. But all that was shored up in a quick time, and we started having a lot of uncomfortable conversations within the company, and intentionally, and that's the word of the day, intentionally having these conversations with associates to find out how they were feeling about what had happened, and you know how they were dealing with it. It was difficult. But we had those conversations. We hired a DEI officer. Now we have all these resource groups that are, you know, working with folks across the company. One of the conversations that I had with our then HR person was, you know, the bank, Worcester Bank is a great bank. I don't know if there are people who bank at Worcester Bank, but it's a great bank. And I've worked at a lot of banks in my career, some small, some larger, but the culture there is inclusive. And, you know, and the realization that we're not perfect, but we're open to see that we're not perfect, and we're open to make change when we can and as we can. And so a lot of that was done. The conversation I would have with our HR person, I would say, well, why are the majority of the people of color on the front line, so in the teller positions and those kinds of things? And the conversation was, well, you know, we try to get more people of color in these positions, but it's hard because of this and that. I said, then we're not looking in the right places, and we need to extend and go further. And they have.
So what conversation happens in your head as that leader? Like oftentimes you're the only one in the room, you've said. What conversation is in your head when you know that I have to have this difficult conversation?
Well, sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's not. Because, you know, as much as, you know, you want to say, you know, that's an injustice and, you know, this is not happening right, you know, in some cases there could be consequences that come with being so open and honest. And so, you know, like in any situation, I think you weigh, you know, you weigh the outcome and you decide, is this the right moment to speak? And sometimes it's not. And you bide your time and then you have your say at a later time. And it depends on how you say it. You know, you don't lash out at people, but you try to get people to understand some of the disparity that's happening that a lot of times they don't. I truly believe, not everyone. There are some people who know what they're doing, but I think there are folks who don't realize some of the biases and some of the things. We all carry biases, we all carry, we all discriminate in some way at some time in our lives. But it's, I think, becoming self-aware and really understanding who you are and how you need to interact with other people.
So that's you, as a Black woman with that weight, sometimes the only one in the room. What about the other people in the room? Like, let's talk about allyship. What is it that needs to be built or present with your colleagues to have such a inclusive, rich environment?
Again, I think it's those conversations, and as I said, I've been really blessed to have a lot of mentors over the years, a lot of folks who were in my corner, I'll say, and especially really good friends, one of which is here today, my friend Sarah. We've been friends since grade school. And I had another friend, Pastor Lottie, who passed away. But when I would be in situations where I was being, I remember at the bank before WSFS, I had the opportunity to be the manager of their retail operations. And like I said, I had been in banking for a while, but I was like, oh God, can I do that? Do I really? And it was a smaller niche bank. And in addition to being the director of retail operations, I was going to be the CRA officer, the BSA officer. I mean, there were a lot of titles that, went with it. And I remember having the conversation, like, I don't know. And the two of them saying to me, you put your pants on every day just like everybody else does. And you can do whatever you put your mind to. You can learn. It's not that you can't learn. And so you can learn to do the job, and you have just as much right to be in that position as anybody. And so luckily, I've had those kinds of folks in my life. The HR person who I mentioned previously, Peggy Edmonds, she and I worked together at Mellon Bank long ago. And again, it's bringing your whole self to the work that you do. And no matter what it is, whether you're picking up garbage or whatever you're doing, do it the best that you can do. And that has been my mantra throughout life, is to do the best work that I can do, to learn, the most that I can. And Peggy saw that work ethic. So when the list came around, when WSFS Bank was coming to purchase Christiana Bank and Trust, she saw my name on the list and said, oh my God, it's Vernita, we gotta get her back. So, how proud do I feel that I have folks of all colors who, have sort of fed into my life and encouraged me, and I've been able to have some of those honest conversations with them, sometimes even when it was hard.
Yeah, so tell us more about that trust, because we talked about this before, and I think it was obvious to me that doesn't happen overnight, right? You don't just walk in a room, so tell us more about how that trust is built.
You really have to build that trust with people, and it takes time. And certainly not just in my career, but in life in general, I think. You have to work with folks and help them to understand, where you're coming from, some of the disparities that you've seen. I can remember the recent Mayor Persicki, who just passed away in Delaware. He came to a meeting at the bank, and I was the only one in the room. There were other people in the room. I was the only female Black person in the room. And I knew him from, previous relationship, and he reached in to give me a hug and whispered in my ear, "Why are you the only one?" And all I could say was, I'm working on it.
Now, was he a white man?
Yes, yes.
So you knew you had an ally in him somehow? Like he put himself out there to let you know, I see what you see?
Exactly. And that's, unfortunately, that's not the first time that has happened for me. I guess it was Senator Lisa Blunt Rochester came to visit the bank also, and her PR person was there, and same sort of thing happened. She's like, what is happening here? And again, all I could say was, I'm working on it. And strides have been definitely made in terms of, where, in terms of Worcester's Bank anywhere, where the company has come. There are many more senior vice presidents of color within the company, as well as we've had folks in our executive management team. And there's an intentional effort to recruit, to hire, to look at places where good people can be found, good people of color can be found to come into this organization and have the same, rights and freedoms that everybody else has.
I'm going to give you a chance to promote WSFIS a little bit more, only because I want to ask you, you spoke about 2020 and DEI initiatives and things like that, and now that's all under attack from the federal administration. What have you seen at WSFIS because of that? Like, are those things being rolled back?
So we have not. We have not. I think there were some, and my manager's here, but there was a slight tweak, I think, to the title of the DEI group, more around culture and inclusion. But all of the things that were going on, kept going on, and more things. We currently have a group called The Bridge, which is intentionally bringing about folks who want to be in leadership roles of all colors, but to really allow those people to be seen. Because in these corporations, a lot of times, if you don't know somebody who knows somebody, and you're not close to somebody who is close to somebody, then you don't get seen. And so this is an intentional way to bring those folks up to the forefront and allow them to achieve and to go as far as they want to go.
I think it's time we give LaVante.
I think you better let her talk. I can sit here and listen to my mama all day.
Okay, LaVante. Yes. So we know a little bit about your grandmother, now we know a little bit about your mom. How did they influence who you are today?
Well, I have taught her so well. But no, growing up, so Mom is talking about her banking career, but she is so much more. I think I have sat in more board meetings and civic association meetings than I can count. Because she has always been about impact and community and trying to make spaces better for not only people of color, but anyone around her. And so when you get to see that leadership every day in your household, it's powerful. And when you have a rough moment, you can call up your grandmother and she can give you non-filtered advice. There's just something that you become inside that's unstoppable, not too big-headed, because they told me the same thing. Don't start smelling yourself too much is what they would say. But overall, I would say it has been just transformative in what I believe I can achieve as a Black woman.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a giant question, so just give me the footnotes. How has being a Black woman affected your life? And I know that's like, that's a whole thesis to write, but give us like just a little thing, what comes to your mind when I say that?
Mom's nervous because she knows I like to cut up, but I love being blackity black. I love it, okay? Yes, I am an African American woman. I think about being in classes at the University of Delaware and being the only one. And there is a certain way you have to carry yourself and show up to show people, don't play with me, but also that I deserve to be here. And there was a moment, I received my master's in social work from the University of Pennsylvania. And thank you. Thank you, but that's nerve-wracking going to an Ivy League school coming from, I attended the William Penn High School in Delaware, and so it's a culture shock. However, you have to learn to rise to the occasion, and there's moments where you have that self-doubt, and I'm strongly based in my faith, but then I pull on the women from history before me, those examples, my mom, my grandma, my aunts, and you just get this feeling of being unstoppable, and that's where that's the lane that I move in. Like, I love to be creative. That's why I opened my own mental health private practice, because I like to do things my way, and so that's where I am.
So clearly, and I'll loop your mom, I don't know your mom's name.
Annie.
Annie? So Annie, Vernita, LaVante, all strong, confident women who seem to be mostly comfortable putting yourselves in spaces. But turn that to the other side, right? The people on the other side of the table, your colleagues that are either men or white women or the people in power, essentially. You come with all this strength and confidence, but what do you need from the other side to create a conducive environment, an inclusive environment? Am I making sense with my question?
I get where you're going. So, I think there is a level of realness and accountability that our counterparts have to have in seeing us and understanding that we are coming from a history of being unwanted and unseen and being treated as less than. And as much as we have pushed past that, it still shows up in the room. And you have to do an inner check within yourself to say, how am I still holding on to those pieces of power that don't allow persons of color to stand and be who they are? How am I discriminating? How am I doing things that may hold them back, either systemically or just in the individual that I show up as? And I think you also have to understand that we come into the room recognizing that that is there, and it's a force that we have to fight against, and sometimes we can't speak it because there will be consequences. And so in that allyship you were talking about, it's about building true relationships and building trust to where we can feel comfortable and safe. There's a lot of times when persons of colors are in the room and we don't feel safe to be our full selves because do you really have my back? And I think that's a challenge that I would give everyone. Do I really have their back? Or is there something in me that still feels like I have power and I want to hold persons of color back? And I think that's the difficult part of the conversation.
So what do we do with that? So step one, about self-evaluation.
Self-evaluating. First you have to be real with yourself. Stop lying to yourself. It's one of the things we work on in therapy all the time. We all have these underlying thoughts and values and beliefs going through. So you need to check your value system first and check your beliefs. And once you check it, you need to kind of bounce it off of someone and put words to it. You can speak it. You can tell us the truth of, I've actually been showing up this way and I realize it could be harmful to you, or I've had these thoughts and it's not helping you to progress as the human and intelligent professional that you are. And those are the conversations we are having. Overthrow the government, isn't that what it said in the thing?
I heard it. Or change the government. Okay, looking at my watch, so I'm gonna throw out the last question. So as we continue to examine the promises of the Declaration of Independence, like you said, so life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, what do you think needs to be true for those promises to happen in your life? Or those promises to be fulfilled?
Well, first, I think people need to know who they are. So you need to dig deep and really realize, who am I and what am I? And think about some of our behaviors when we're in these types of settings. Because, I bring bias to conversations just like anybody else. And so first check yourself and, really know who you are. And I think for me, listening to that statement, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, first of all, nobody can make me happy. And, I have to know who I am and where I find happiness and how I pursue my life. And I'll announce to the room that I'm retiring at the end of the year. And I'm gonna find my happiness there.
She gonna watch her grandson some more. That's
But, 46 years of working, not just a career, but being a mom and, a person of faith and having lots of responsibilities. I pursue happiness in things that I want to do. I've often said that this work that I do in terms of managing social responsibility for this bank and over my years of banking, always being in some sort of customer serving or front-facing role out in the community, that my role, is, I figure it's not really a job, it's a calling, what I do. And I get to, help folks in our nonprofit world who need help. I get to talk with a lot of people and see a lot of injustice that happens in the communities where we are. And we can't do it all, but we do as much as we can, and we try to make as much impact as we can in doing that work. And so for me, bringing that happiness to other people and affecting other people's lives so that they too can then pursue happiness for them and liberty.
Yes. I would piggyback off of Mom. So last year I had the honor of being a Leadership Delaware Fellow. Shout out to my fellow LDIers. And to sit in rooms and hear all that is going on and all the problems and all the things that need to be changed, first you get drained because it's like, oh goodness, why is so much happening? But then you realize that you can't just sit on the sideline. You have to be the one to step up to the plate and take an action to make change. So when I think about the pursuit, that I think some of that comes in it. But then when it comes to happiness, I think about my work day in and day out with women predominantly who I see for mental health services. And so many of us don't even know what our happy is, just like Mike said. And I think the first step is, what brings you joy? And I said this in my TED Talk last night. When you tune in with your core and your beliefs and your values, if you didn't have any more responsibilities in this lifetime, how would you live? What truly makes you happy and brings you joy? So you make change and then you pursue your own version of happiness and joy. And again, I'm hoping Mom's happiness is watching her 4-year-old grandson. I told her already, I'm not that grandmother.
Trying to change your mind. So we didn't have too much time to talk into community, but I think it's obviously that you're both very, very community driven. And so I want to thank you for sharing yourselves once again with the community, with us, and to be so humble and gracious and joyous. And we are very lucky to have spent this time with you. So I appreciate both of you putting yourselves out there for us.
Thank you. And congratulations to the Fund for Women and Girls for 30 years of pursuing this work. Keep it up.
Good morning. For those who don't already know me, my name is Brandon Serini. I'm the Director of Operations for the Fund for Women and Girls. It's been an honor of mine to be an employee of the fund for 12 plus years, so almost half of the existence of the fund. And forgive me because I'm usually behind the scenes in the back office, so being up here in front of everybody is a bit of a change for me. But it's wonderful to see everybody that's joined us today, and thank you for being here. Before we move into the final part of our program, we want to give you and your table just a couple minutes to reflect on what we just heard. After hearing Vernita and LaVante's conversation, what stayed with you? Did anything they shared shift how you think about the promises of the Declaration of Independence? Did any part of their experiences feel familiar to your own life? Did anything surprise you? Please take just a couple minutes to talk amongst yourselves.
I work there as their special events manager, so I still do. I help support their kickoff event at the community center, their spring concert fundraiser at Uptown, and then in 2 weeks we have our end of the season dance recital at the Decare. That's my part-time role, and my full-time role is the YT. Yeah. Hi, how are you? For me, I share. My name is
It also struck me as she said you're not looking in the right places, right? Yeah. I've always sort of been involved in nonprofit and arts, and I felt that for me. Do more to find.
And for me, I think sometimes individuals have not experienced the discussions they were having at the stage. It's maybe hard to comprehend, so I think the donations are
Thank you, everyone. We can come back together. I hope everyone can continue to share their experiences today and continue the conversations as you go out about your day. So we began this morning by looking at yesterday through the spoken word performance, then grounded ourselves in today through the experiences and reflections shared by Vernita and LaVante. Now, in the final part of our program, we want to turn toward tomorrow, what change looks like in action, and what is possible for each of us to do starting now. To begin, we are honored to hear from an amazing young woman participating in our Project Dignity program. Her story is a reminder that change doesn't begin with perfection or power. It begins when people are willing to step outside their comfort zones, use their voices, and become active participants in their communities. Mahi Bhatti is a junior at Downingtown STEM Academy with a strong passion for women's rights, leadership, and service. She's an active tennis player and a dedicated member of Project Dignity, where she works to ensure high schoolers have access to proper menstrual products and resources. With a growing interest in pursuing a career in healthcare, she hopes to continue her commitment to advocacy and compassion to make a lasting impact on others' lives. Please welcome Mahi.
Hi, Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning. I keep thinking about something we heard earlier today many times, the words life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We hear them so often that they can start to feel finished, as if they're already fully achieved. However, being here today, listening to the history, the performances, and everything shared this morning, it feels more like those words are still something people are trying to actively make real. My name is Mahibati. I'm 16 years old. I'm a junior at Downtown STEM Academy, and I help bring together a group of peers to start Project Dignity in my district, a project aiming to provide students with the proper menstrual products in the school bathrooms. And what's been sticking with me the most is how many times people throughout history were essentially told the same thing in different forms. Not yet, not you, or just flat out no. No, you can't vote yet. No, you can't work that job. No, your voice doesn't belong in that space. And no, your experience isn't enough to matter. What inspired me the most is that those people kept going anyway. They kept writing, organizing, and speaking even when it would be easier not to. I had never really done anything like Project Dignity in my life before, but suddenly I was sitting in on meetings and then later even speaking directly to adults in my districts that were in positions of power. And that felt intimidating in a way that I hadn't experienced before. At that point, I remember thinking it was surreal that I was having multiple meetings with my principal and vice principal, because usually that means you're in a lot of trouble rather than trying to implement a policy. But I kept thinking that I was just another student in the room, and at times I wasn't even sure I should be there in the first place. A driving factor of this project was the fact that despite many communities being treated as less than, they still spoke up. So even if I'm just viewed as another student, I'll make sure my voice will be heard. I started having conversations with other students. A lot of us didn't even know each other well at first, but we came from different friend groups, different classes. But as we talked, it became clear that our experiences were one of the same. There was this moment where we all kind of realized we were dealing with the same thing in different fonts. And that's where Project Dignity started, a group of students who were connected by something that we had all experienced. I want everybody to close their eyes for a moment. Just close them. Raise your hand if you've ever felt a gap between what people say is equal and what actually feels equal in real life. Open your eyes and just look around. That's part of why this project started in the first place. Because for a lot of people, inequity doesn't always look dramatic or obvious at first. Sometimes it looks like missing class quietly, or sitting in a bathroom trying to figure out what to do, or feeling embarrassed over something completely natural. Our group decided to look into it. We surveyed more than 200 students across secondary schools, and what we found made it clear our stories were not individual. Over 70% of students reported using substitutes when they didn't have any products. Over 54% said they had to leave school or miss educational time because of it. And 74% shared feelings of embarrassment or anxiety in those moments. And behind those numbers are students who are just trying to get through the school day. One anonymous response from the survey that really stayed with me said, "My family had not been able to afford menstrual products for me so many times. I got my period in the 5th grade and my mom will only ever buy the products if she's menstruating as well. Otherwise, I've used toilet paper, paper towels, and used pads for much longer than recommended because I knew there was a scarce amount of them. I've had to rely on school and church to get them, but so many times I've been let down by the school in that aspect. It's the same as toilet paper and paper towels for boys and should be absolutely free." After gathering this data, we brought it to a district policy committee meeting and shared both the data and the student stories. And what became clear is that the focus needed to shift from having products somewhere in the building, usually in the nurse's office, to students being able to actually access them when they need them, privately and consistently. Right now, that looks different depending on the schools. In some buildings, products are in the bathrooms, in others, they're only in the nurse's office. Access changes on where a student is, and that inconsistency is exactly the problem. Because when access depends on location or staffing or individual decisions, it stops being reliable. And when it's not reliable, students are the ones who deal with the consequences in the middle of their school day. After 3 long months of meetings, surveying, data collection, and a profusion of emails and help from the fund, the school district's policy committee is drafting a menstrual policy to protect the dignity of menstruating students in our district, breaking the stigma and protecting our education. And I want to pause here for a second and challenge everyone to really think about this. What does it mean in practice for rights and dignity to be something that everyone can actually access? What I've learned through this process is that change like this doesn't happen because of one conversation going perfectly. It happens because people keep showing up even when it starts to feel repetitive, even when it feels like nothing is moving yet at all. And in advocacy work, especially as students, you hear a lot of versions of no. Not now, not sure, not enough, not a priority. But one thing I've realized is that you don't actually sense which no is the last one before a yes. So you don't stop. You keep bringing the data, you keep bringing the stories, you keep showing up. You keep making the issue harder to ignore until it becomes something that has to be addressed. Because when you look at the history we heard today, change comes from persistence, from people who keep speaking up even when they weren't immediately heard. And I think that's what connects all of us here today, the willingness to believe that silence doesn't have to be the final answer. So as we move on to what comes next, I hope we don't think of tomorrow as something distant or abstract. I hope we think of it as something we're already building, whether it's in conversations like this, in decisions like this, and in the choice to keep going, even if it would be easier not to. Because I think that somewhere across the world, there's a girl my age who is just like me. She has the same aspirations, the same grit, except she wouldn't ever be in a room like this. She wouldn't be a part of these conversations. She doesn't go to school and she's not asked what she thinks. And I don't understand why I get that chance and she doesn't. But I do understand what that asks of me. It means my voice is something I'm responsible for. And that responsibility shows up in the most moments when it would be easier to stay quiet. That's something I'm still learning, but it's also the reason I started speaking up now. Because a voice only matters if you choose to use it. It's for a better tomorrow. Thank you.
Nothing short of amazing, so thank you. I also want to take a moment to thank Vernita and LaVante for being here with us. Andrew and I had the chance to sit down with them, and I was just very, very honored that you have agreed to be here with us and agreed to share your stories, your insights, your experiences. Because the one thing that I think, when I think about what message I would want people to take away from today, I think it's the message of we need to keep learning. And that's learning from history, that's learning from each other, that's learning about how our government works and participating in it. That we can keep learning. And so thank you for being here and helping us continue that learning. I noticed there's no clock in here, so that's a little dangerous. Josh had mentioned that, and he was right, the reason we selected to have our 30th anniversary event here is because of that first Pennsylvania Women's Rights Convention that was held here in 1852, just 4 years after the Seneca Falls Convention. And they actually, the History Center has a report, a written report of the proceedings that happened, which is really quite interesting. But I just want to read one section from the beginning of that. It says, "The Friends of Justice and Equal Rights are earnestly invited to assemble in convention to consider and discuss the present position of woman in society, her natural rights and relative duties. The reasons for such a convention are obvious. With few exceptions, both the radical and conservative portions of the community agree that woman, even in this progressive age and country, suffers under legal, educational, and vocational disabilities which ought to be removed." And this has been an interesting experience for me to dive a little bit more into our history. I was not a fan of history class in school. I just remember memorizing a lot of dates and a lot of wars, and the only one I actually remember when it happened was the War of 1812. That's what I took from history. But as I've gotten older and I realized that the saying is true, that history repeats itself. And we can learn from our history. We can learn what we need to take from it, and we can learn what mistakes we would rather not repeat. And I think that gives an amazing opportunity for us. Michelle Alexander had written a New York Times essay talking about, I'm going to forget the actual title, but it was something about "We are not the resistance." And she talks about, I'm just going to read a little bit from this. "The struggle for human freedom and dignity extends back centuries and is likely to continue for generations to come." And she quoted Vincent Harding, "The long, continuous yearning and reaching toward freedom flows throughout history, like a river, sometimes powerful, tumultuous, and roiling with life, at other times meandering and turgid." Michelle's point that she's making in the essay is that the work towards freedom, the work towards life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that work is the ongoing work that is happening. That is the revolutionary river. And anyone who tries to stop that is actually the people who are resisting. So we can be part of that revolutionary river. And I just have to read her one more quote from that. "Every leap forward for American democracy, from slavery's abolition to women's suffrage, to minimum wage laws, to the Civil Rights Act, to gay marriage, has been traceable to the revolutionary river. If we pause long enough and consider where we stand in relationship to the centuries-long quest to create a truly equitable democracy, we may be able to see that the revolutionary river that brought us this far just might be the only thing that could possibly carry us to a place where we all belong." So I think what we learned from history, and Brandon, if you can pull up my little cartoon, this is my most favorite cartoon ever. And this was something that Sidney Wilkinson put out after Ruth Bader Ginsburg had passed away. And I think it communicates very much what we are asked to do with history. We are asked to pick up the gavel. We are asked to join the work of our predecessors and continue to carry it forward, no matter who we are. We also learn from the mistakes from history. Lucretia Mott, who chaired the Women's Convention here, she was also an avid abolitionist, and she actually received a lot of death threats for her work to end slavery. But the national women's rights movement actually went through a split at one point because, in fact, the author of the Declaration of Sentiments, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and a few other leaders argued that educated white women deserve the right to vote more than formerly enslaved black men and male immigrants. So what should have been an opportunity to actually expand the movement, to draw from each other, to be more inclusive and stronger together, actually divided the movement and weakened it. We have the opportunity to do this work better. And this is something that I've reflected on for a while as I think about what does it actually mean to be a feminist. And I truly believe at this point that to be a feminist, you must also be anti-racist. To be a feminist, you have to stand with people experiencing disabilities, and you cannot be a feminist and be transphobic. When we as an organization sat down to actually write a DEI statement of sorts, instead of ending up with a women's rights statement, we ended up with a human rights statement. And you can actually see that on our website if you want to actually see what our board and staff has come up with together. But what does this actually look like in practice? What does it mean to work together, especially when we're all focusing on different issues? We have different experiences, even there are commonalities. And I want to share just one example. I had the opportunity to participate in a rally day in Harrisburg that was organized by Planned Parenthood, and there were over 20 other organizations participating. So we all had our green sort of rally day shirts on, and you saw green shirts all over the Capitol building, and we went in as teams and met with different legislators. And interestingly enough, instead of it just feeling like chaos and, you know, my issue's gonna get lost in the scope of everything, what happened as we sat down is that we talked with the legislators about this particular piece of legislation that could really make a benefit for women in our communities. And then there's this piece, and this piece. And what happened was basically this mounting pile of evidence that we have work to do to improve things for women and girls and gender expansive individuals in our community. And so instead of those ideas competing, they actually fed each other and build upon each other. And I think that's something for us to really think about as we figure out how to continue to work together. I mentioned also that I think we need to learn about our government. So I learned very recently from a conversation with our Vote 16 participants, and if you don't know what Vote 16 is, I'm not going to take the time to tell you that right now, but go check it out on our website. It's very cool. But a group of these girls were talking, and one of the legislators at Harrisburg had asked them about their civics class. And I remember 9th grade civics class. I don't remember much from it, but I do remember the 3 branches of government, the checks and balances that they're supposed to have, and some of those basic things. All of the girls there were talking about this, and none of their schools had civics classes anymore. The only class that any of them had ever experienced was an advanced placement course or class in government. And so I had to think about that, and I thought, wow, it's no wonder that our current form of government, our democracy, may be experiencing challenges when we're not educating our youth as to what that actually is and what it means. We have been working very, very hard on what we call our Empower Her Vote initiative. There's a page on our website that provides a lot of information as to not just how to do informed voting or how to figure out who your candidates are, but also what the legislative process is like and how you can possibly get involved and use your voice to make change. So I encourage you to check that out when you have a free moment. Finally, we have to learn from each other. I grew up on a small dairy farm in very rural Pennsylvania. And diversity in my class at school was the one Catholic boy. So I was pretty naive about things like racism, and in fact I remember thinking, you know, that was something that happened in the olden days, and clearly by now people know that the pigment of someone's skin doesn't have anything to do with the worth of their character. Which would be nice, but that's not really the case. I think I heard my first racist comment when I was 16, and I thought, wow, is this person really that not smart? But when I was shortly out of college, I had a chance to work as a victim advocate at Victim Services Center in Norristown. And I shared an office with another victim advocate. There were 2 of us in the office. She is a Black woman who grew up in a strong Black community in Norristown. And I can tell you, as this white country girl from central Pennsylvania, I didn't understand her reactions or responses at all. When something would happen and she would react, or she would say something, or we're discussing something and she would say, well, we need to think about this, I didn't get it. I really didn't get it. And I guess the one thing I'll give myself credit for is that at least I didn't say that. And I just listened really hard, and I tried to figure out, why is this her perspective? And after a while, little by little, I started to understand what her perspective was, why it was the way it was, and where it came from her experience. And I guess I want to believe, like LaVante said, that, hopefully, or maybe it was Vernita, I'm not sure, but hopefully one of us, hopefully I'm one of those folks that means well. I want to believe that I'm one of those, but I'm also aware that I have a lot still to learn. We had actually done a focus group with a group of college students. Our board was doing a study on race and gender in the education setting. And this group that the university had pulled together for us was primarily first-generation college students. They all, their families all identified pretty much from like African or Afro-Caribbean descent. Many of their parents were first-generation Americans. And so we're talking about sexism and racism at school, and they're sharing just incredibly painful experiences, particularly with racism. And as we get to the end, I was like, wow, we really can't just say, well, thanks for your information, we'll send you a report in 6 months. So I said to the organizers, what can we do to follow up? What can we do to provide support? And the girls had mentioned a couple of ideas, and so I thought, well, maybe maybe we can help them do a diversity day on campus or something like that. And when the organizers came back to me, and mind you, the organizers were strong Black women who know racism and how it works. They said to me, we want to do an empowerment group for the girls. And this was another one of those moments where I was like, I don't get it. I didn't feel like the girls were naming the issue as being their own self-esteem. I didn't feel like they were the problem. I felt like school was the problem. But I said, I'm not the one to make this call, so I'm going to defer to the organizers. And we supported them in doing a professionally led empowerment group. And I have to say, or confess maybe, that I puzzled over that one for a really long time. And it took me a while to figure out. And it finally clicked for me, and I had an aha moment. And it was probably on a day when I was feeling very discouraged and wanted to give up. And I realized that these women were preparing the young women for a lifetime of racism and sexism, for a lifetime of combating this. They were preparing them for the long haul. And I sit here and I listen to LaVante talking about what it meant to have these women around her that made her feel like she was unstoppable. And what it takes to be able to survive sexism and racism on an ongoing basis. And then it clicked for me, and I finally got it. And I was like, wow, this is something that I need to understand for myself as well. I may be afforded the opportunity to say, I'm a little discouraged, things aren't working out the way I want, and that may not mean anything to my survival. That's not true for every woman. And so, as Mahi said, I have to continue to use my voice regardless of how discouraged I may particularly be feeling that day. So there's a couple things I would like to invite you to do. First of all, I want to invite you to jump in your boat, grab your oars, and join us on the Revolutionary River. If you don't already have your own community of action, I invite you to join ours. You are welcome to join our Gender Equity Action Volunteer Group. I had to check and make sure I said that right because we just named it, and a very official name, Gender Equity Action Group, who is working to advocate for things like paid family leave, affordable childcare, and equitable education. You can host a thought-provoking conversation with your friends, and we're happy to help provide content. You can donate. Just so you know, the donations here not only help us accomplish this advocacy work, but they also help us to fund grants to the many nonprofits throughout the county who are providing direct services for women in need right now. And finally, you can help us get reliable, accurate information out to people, whether your preferred social media is LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. Every little bit helps, and every time we have a chance to learn something new and expand our knowledge base, it equips us as volunteers. This fall, we are also going to be hosting a screening of a new documentary that is coming out next month. It's entitled No Country for Mothers, and we're going to be having it at the Uptown Theater right across the street. And Reshma Sajani is the producer of that documentary. You may recognize her name. She is the one who started Girls Who Code and also wrote the book Brave, Not Perfect. And I asked Brandon if he would just play a trailer of this because what she's looking to do is start a very different conversation around motherhood and childcare and what it means to talk about those things. So we're gonna hope that it's
working moms versus stay-at-home moms.
You have working moms, you have stay-at-home moms, and then you have work-from-home, stay-at-home moms.
Everything that structurally is set up to make motherhood so damn hard.
Does housework count as, well, real work?
Culturally, we've never really told the truth about motherhood.
If we're going to win the culture war, we have to start at home.
What we were up against, starting in the 70s, was a very well-organized backlash campaign, pitting women against each other.
They do want to take the wife out of the home. They do want to get them in the workforce. I know that you have the energy and the dedication to defeat this assault on the family.
The 1970s start to snowball into what then became dubbed as momming wars.
Which comes first, the job or the family?
It's often, I feel like, privileged women policing other women.
The problem, she says, might just be women themselves.
No one gets to the corner office by sitting on the side, not at the table.
Who would you rather marry, a girl boss or a trad wife?
Social media is a weapon. The algorithm is a weapon to reduce our humanity and pit us against each other.
I feel like we cannot support each other when everything is political.
All these moms that we're talking to are caught in this system.
We leave mothers with no support, so the stakes are really high for them.
The United States views motherhood very differently than a lot of other countries do. We really discard the mother by the time she's given birth to the child.
I cannot be the only mom who literally wants to throw up thinking about sending their 12-week-old to daycare.
We're trying to fix women instead of trying to fix the structure.
We are the central nervous system for the home. We choose what our kids watch. We choose who they pray to.
Some of us want to be career oriented and then some of us don't. But what about those of us in the middle who are both?
We never really fought for the ability for women to choose and for women to be able to move in and out of the workforce without penalty. You are a mother. You make the human race survive. What if we had a society where you didn't have to go back to work 10 days after having a baby? What if you had a society where all your income didn't pay for childcare? What if we had a society that didn't penalize you for being a mom?
I invite you to join us for that in the fall. We also also will have the opportunity to do home screenings. So if you would want to organize a home screening or a more private screening with a group of friends to have a conversation, we can work with that as well. I want to end with saying, I was asked recently what keeps me going when things seem hopeless. And I don't know the odds of our success. I don't know if we'll be successful in getting a statewide paid leave program for women who don't currently have it through their jobs. And I don't know if we'll be successful at finding a better approach to affordable childcare with well-paid teachers. But I do know for a fact that the odds of things changing for the better are 0 if we don't try. I think, Andrea, are we?
10:32.
10:32, okay. Thank you for hanging in there with us. Hopefully this was a good investment of your time. Thank you for being with us here, celebrating our 30th with us. Thank you for everyone who helped make the program today successful. And we'll find your vote.